Welcome back to another video on Gearsaw Studios, and today I'm going to show you how to build a giant Christmas tree. So that way you have a nice town square to whatever Christmas place you have, or you just have something more festive. So before I begin, remember, please like and subscribe, and without further ado, onto the tutorial. So, we're going to be using spruce wood, spruce leaves, and an assortment of concrete for this. Because, well, it's just a tree, you don't need much more than these two nature blocks, and the concrete is just ornaments. You can use a lot of things for ornaments, but concrete is the best choice, I'd say, along with frog lights and sea lanterns. Then, find yourself an area. It doesn't need to be particularly flat, and you need to designate an area for your trunk. So, just a little 3x3 square like that will suffice. By 3 thing we have going on here, we now want to create a trunk, a complete one for that matter. So, make sure all of your wood blocks are aligned the same way. A good way to check this on Java is pressing F3, looking at the side of the screen. Make sure they all say Z or Y, because if you don't, then you kind of have an issue where some of them will look different. So, from there, you just want to widen it up a little on some parts, and you want to go very tall on the middle block. Then thicken it up on the lower portions, and you should end up with a weird wooden spire, albeit this is an incomplete version. With our old trunk here, you can see it's roughly 10-15 blocks tall, and I recommend making it taller, even if you deviate from your 3x3 base. Still, try to make it roughly 20 to 30 blocks tall. For reference, those candy canes are about 20 blocks tall, so making this around 20 blocks tall would be a good choice. With a broader trunk, we can now go on. And I also erroneously said in the last clip that those candy canes are 20 blocks tall. Only the part before it starts curving is 20 blocks tall, which means this is about 19, which is a good spot. So, a couple of blocks up, we should calculate the middle. So the middle is right here, and we want to mark it. So like this. And then, what we want to do is every 3 or 4 blocks up, possibly 5, you want to create another mark. So, make it look like this, and once you're done with that, it will be much easier to place our branches. We got some markers, and what we want to do from here is we need to extend them. So, about 10 blocks out. However, remember, this is the middle, so you need to actually count these blocks. So, this is 1, 2, then 3, 4, 5. So, that's 10, and you want to shrink it every you want to shrink it every layer. So, if this is 10 blocks, then let's make this one 8 blocks. Unfortunately, we don't have to do the counting once the first layer is done. Then we can make this 6, then we can make this 4. So, you can see it progressively gets shorter, the branches get shorter. So, you might actually want to increase your height. So, I'm just going to do that real quick so that way we can have one final layer that's 2 blocks. So that way it just looks a little bit more polished. And yeah, that's how we're going to do the branches. For the final part of this build's preparation, we need to figure out where the small diagonal branches are going to go. So I'm going to start with this layer, and they should be 4 blocks long. However, don't make your 4 blocks like this, because you can see, well, that just makes a square. So pretend as if you had to keep your support blocks in place. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. So this would be the approximate length. Of course, correct it so that way it's not just completely off center. Then remove the supports, and you can see now we have a spot for a diagonal branch. So just continue doing that, and you can see it's just a little bit shorter, which is exactly what we want. Continue this for the entire place, except for if your layer is 3 blocks or less, because you can see we just place an extra spruce leaf there. With the markers now in place, you can see we have a good spot where we can place our leaves, well, branches. Also, a neat trick, you can actually just go out 1 or 2 blocks for each of the diagonal ones, albeit it starts to not work after a while because these ones are 2, and it'll eventually lag behind like in the bottom section. Still, it's a very good strategy. From here, replace your markers with spruce leaves, because now visibility is not that much of an issue anymore. So, it's much easier to just have them be the block you need, rather than, well, actually there's no other choice. Replace them to spruce leaves. Since we have all the spruce leaves now in place, we can now thicken them up. So, we can do that by just going around like 2/3 of the way through the leaf. Well, branch. I keep mixing those up. And we just place leaves around it. Now they're a little bit thicker. Then we can thicken up their base a little bit more, so that way it's a little less bare looking. Then we now have one little branch looking thing. Then do this for all the other branches that are horizontal and not diagonal. So I've changed my graphics to fast mode, mainly because translucency actually makes it a lot harder to build. So I do recommend changing your graphics to fast in the settings, which makes leaves full blocks, albeit that doesn't change your behaviors. So what we want to do now is finish the diagonal ones. So you can see I've done some of them on the upper layers, albeit it's a little hard to see since everything is so green. Then, once you're done with that, cover the rest of the trunk, excluding this bottom part, with leaves, so that way you can't really see the wood completely. Now, we got the diagonal leaves in place, and we just have a very symmetrical Christmas tree. Albeit, I do not think I have the skills necessary to make it asymmetric. We can make it asymmetrical in other ways, such as by adding ornaments. So, replacing various leaves with different colors of concrete, possibly frog lights, sea lanterns, all those are good ways to add ornaments. So, I recommend adding the little chunks of blocks into it. Now, our build is finished. It can be quite difficult to add the stars, so I'm not very confident in my skills in making a star, so I'm not going to include it. But we now have a very nice Christmas tree. We could definitely just attach this to just about any build that's Christmas themed, and it would look significantly better, especially for a town center, or possibly just the outskirts of a forest. You could make a forest, albeit that would be incredibly difficult, considering the complexity of these trees. So, either way, I highly recommend building one if you want to dabble your feet into a little bit of nature building. And with that, it's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this video, remember, please like and subscribe. So, enjoy your holidays. Gearsaw out.